Alrighty. We got why esports are dying while the FGC is thriving. Oh, baby.
Man, it's really never been a better time to be a fighting game player, has it? Street Fighter 6 now holds the record for the most entrants in a video game tournament with a 7,000 person bracket.
Holy shit. That is massive. The thing about Evo is, if you're unaware, is like it's the biggest open tournament for fighting games for the year. And like if you're just like a nobody, you can just go get a plane ticket, fly over there, and like enter the tournament for whatever game. There's no like pre-qualifiers, there's no invite only. It's just show up and you can enter. And that's one of the coolest things about the Evo series. But to have 7,000 entrants, that's insane to me. Only fighting games could withstand this amount of entries. If you were to try to apply this to any other game genre, I would imagine it would not go over so well. And doesn't Evo, isn't it like a week of Evo, or is it still like Friday, Saturday, Sunday? I'm pretty sure it's like a whole week of Evo, if I recall.
And a World Finals that will have a $1 million prize pool for the winner. Tekken is taking the momentum from Tekken 7 and using it to absolutely propel themselves into the new generation of consoles. Guilty Gear Strive just saw its biggest tournament in the series history and is reinvented the game with the new season changes. Also,
Nice.
They finally added Johnny! Under Night 2 is finally happening, Grand Blue Rising is adding Fall Guys, Mortal Kombat 4 that adding a cop character was apparently a good idea.
Police brutality, come on.
Bro, fighting game players are just swimming in just fighting games, and I think that's awesome. You know, it ain't looking so hot over here with the FPS genre, dude. It's looking pretty bleak, if I do say so myself. But at least some video game genres are thriving. I'm happy to see that. More than happy to see that. There was a time when I was like okay at fighting games, you know, within my little pond of friends. You know, we would just verse each other in certain fighting games like MVC3, Street Fighter, Third Strike, a couple other ones, Tekken. There's a brief stint of Tekken in there. And bro, it was just so, there was a good amount of Smash in there, but you know, that was just me and my buddies. And throughout the years, the fighting game community has had its ups and downs. And right now, it's just like massive strides.
Coming up.
And tournaments all over the world are reaching record heights in their attendance. Fighting games are on the up and up, with Street Fighter leading the charge. All feels right in the fighting game community. But if you were to look anywhere else, you would see headlines about how competitive games are falling short. Household names like CLG have been wiped off the face of the earth, and orgs like TSM and Team Liquid have gone through massive layoffs in the past few years. The leagues for games aren't doing so well either, with players in the LCS staging a walkout due to the conditions of the Challenger League and the overall.
Like with the whole League of Legends thing, it was something along the lines of you had your tier 1 teams and then your tier like 2 and 3 teams that were trying to have their own league, but they needed the support of the tier 1 teams, but the tier 1 teams didn't want to give them the support. Something like that. And this is kind of crazy to think about, that the entirety of a game will get dictated by the top 10th percent of the players. Because League of Legends has been around for like what, 15, 20 years, something like that now. It's an old ass game. And the people that are at the top, most likely they have been playing since day one. And this goes along with any other game that has any sort of like skill gap. There's this thing called skill creep or power creep. Not really power creep, but more skill creep. In that the longer a game is out, eventually the players that start on day one will be at the tippy top. But if you're trying to get more people to play your game, the barrier to entry is way higher than what it used to be. All right, so there's a whole thing with League, and I don't know what's going on. I used to watch League, but not so much anymore.
Esports League is in absolute shambles, with several people saying that it could be the last year the league runs. So,
yeah, Overwatch League, I'm pretty sure it's done. Didn't they do that little $6 million payout to all the teams that paid $20 million to get in? And it's like either leave with 0 or leave with 6 mil. So the teams just disbanded, and OWL is no longer a thing. But I think the game company said they do want competitive tournaments still, but it's not going to be OWL anymore.
What happened? Why is an industry that was so big just a few years ago suddenly caving in? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about why esports is dying while the FGC is thriving.
And I just want to take a little second to say that the whole dying aspect or side of esports is happening mostly with FPSs and probably League of Legends, just because League is just such a niche skill set. You know, you have your little third party, or not third party, like your third person view, top down. You control one little unit. You know, you got your little abilities down there, very much like StarCraft or, you know, those type of games. But it seems like the argument is just FPS is dying, and perhaps League of Legends is thrown on top of it because of its own issues. So, and then here's FGC just chilling and just doing their thing. Ooh, part 1. The fall of esports.
So let's start with the basics. What is esports? Esports is the catch-all term used for people playing video games competitively for a cash prize. That's a pretty wide net. So for us,
and just to clarify, the people that are playing, that are at least entering these tournaments, are playing this game nonstop. All right, they will stop to sleep and eat, but you know, for the most part, these are going to be like your 12 plus hours a day grinders. All right, these guys just eat, sleep, and breathe the game for whatever game it is.
For our discussion today, we're going to have to narrow down the definition to something more concise. Esports generally represents the institutions around competitive games. A lot of esports have their own leagues and franchises built up around different competitive video games. For example, League of Legends has the League Championships, the European Championships, the League of Legends Championships Korea, and several others, all of which play for spots in major tournaments like the Mid-Season Invitational and, of course, the World Championship. This is a common model for different esports nowadays with games like Valorant, Call of Duty.
If that game is so lucky enough to have such a wide reach around the world, to have their own country league, you know, like he said, League of Legends Europe, League of Legends Korea, League of Legends NA, or whatever. You are lucky if you get to have your game transcend, you know, just away from the United States into other countries, and it, you know, be able to, I don't know, sustain its own little competitive community somewhere else.
Overwatch and Rocket League having similar formats with varying sizes, with other games like Counter-Strike having a similar third-party type of system. A lot of the current championship leagues for esports are franchised, meaning that these are closed circuits where all of the teams are owned by organizations and investors. Normally, getting a team into one of these franchises is expensive, like really expensive.
What was that? Wait.
Organizations and investors. Normally, getting a team into one of these franchises is expensive, like really expensive.
Okay, how much does it cost to buy a League of Legends franchise? The buy-in price for the league was $10 million for existing League of Legends teams who have previously participated in League Championship Series or Challenger Series. Oh my. So $10 million for an existing team was the buy-in. And just as a reference, Overwatch League, a spot for Overwatch League was $20 million. That is crazy. It's 10 million for an existing league team. Like, you have to be somebody first. Like, what is this number? Does this number go up or down if you're like a who, like a nobody? That's what I'm kind of curious about. Like, this is like a hilarious amount of money.
Expensive. Millions of dollars to own a team that's based in North America. That is ridiculous. Esports used to be really small, with people gathering around in conventions and small tournaments in hotel ballrooms. The first League of Legends Worlds was held at DreamHack in Sweden for a prize pool of $100,000, which is still a lot, but compare it to 7 years later when they're playing all the way in South Korea, and the winners get a prize of $2.4 million with a full prize pool of $6.45 million.
That's
safe
crazy.
to say that esports got pretty big pretty quickly, with some games like Dota 2 constantly having extremely high prize pools, and Fortnite even running
40 million was the prize pool for Dota? Oh, this is news to me. When was this? Oh my god. Wait, is Dota going through the ringer like League of Legends in terms of like esports peril?
a World Cup where the winner took home $3 million.
Damn, Fortnite is popping when it comes to like all the money and shit. Like all this like team-based shit, that's for the birds, man. If you want the money, go for Fortnite, dude.
Just for themselves. Esports was seemingly on the up and up through the late 2010s and even into the early 2020s. Nothing could stop the momentum of this new blooming industry. Oh, that's weird. I hope nothing bad comes from that. Yeah, so the entire world shut down, forcing basically every industry to try and find a new way to function. Now, normally this would be pretty bad for sport-based industries. However, this actually helped.
What is this game? I have never seen this game. This is like Rocket League, but like top down, and you have like health bar and stand bar. What is this game?
Esports out a bit. Like, let's be real, when you get a bunch of people stuck inside their homes, not being able to do anything for a year, the amount of people that play more video games just naturally increases. So more and more people started tuning into esports and following these leagues. More people watching means more interest, and more interest means more money flowing into the industry.
This is very common in actual real sports as well. You know, the amount of people that watch football, at least in the US, is massive. Like American football or whatever. It's huge. Every time the like football, like the NFL starts back up, everyone's hustling and bustling over their fantasy team, fantasy league. This player's doing good, that player's doing good. And even if you don't like the NFL, there's always like the college side to football. And that gets like a huge amount of traction and interest going as well.
But that doesn't mean everything was going well. Most esports are played at LAN tournaments. This means that players are all on the same space connected to the same server with actual physical LAN cables. This method reduces the lag factor of the game to practically zero, as there's no worry of Wi-Fi packet losses or distance from the server being an issue.
That's why I think tournaments that hold their like world tournament, whatever, at a LAN, like on a stage where there's like zero packet loss, there's zero lag, and you get to see everybody's real-time reactions and skill when they're put on the spot. Everybody is out of their element. I think that's the coolest part, is seeing that type of tournament.
Server is also generally on site. There's no
like all this like online tournament shit. That's nothing. That's nothing. It honestly isn't. Everyone's at their own little personal setups at the comfort of their own home. You know, they got their personal peripherals. Maybe, who knows? Are they cheating? Are they not cheating? Oh my god! You know. But then you want to take everybody out of their element, bring them to some remote location with some computers and shit. Then your skill can be tested.
need to worry of someone disconnecting due to Wi-Fi or internet issues, and the computers are provided for the players on the site, so they should theoretically all be playing on the same equipment with the same amount of performance. However, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked, and we were all forced into our homes. Now, all of the pro players were forced to play at home on their own equipment. This isn't generally bad for pro teams, as they have the money for high-powered PCs and good internet connections. However, there is always going to be a level of latency introduced when playing in a remote location that cannot be controlled. It's not like players could move so they were all equal distance from the server.
And it's not just your own personal equipment. It's not just your PC or your console for whatever your favorite esport game is. All right, it also takes into account your internet speed. Are you just chilling at like, I don't know, 200-300 megabytes like upload download speed, or do you got like 1,000 up and down? It doesn't matter. It matters if you have like fiber or not. Like, so many technical things that are just way over my head come into play, besides like your personal computer or your whatever mouse or whatever you want to use.
Some teams simply live further away from the competitive servers than the others did. In fact, a lot of the time, players didn't even live together, meaning players on a team would all have different ping. Now,
everyone is going to have their own different ping, and just by the sheer nature of it, of video games in general, the more money you have, the better you can set yourself up for success. If you have more money, just as a person, you can afford the better internet, you can afford the better monitor, the better PC, so on and so forth. All right. With real sports, yes, there's a little bit of a money aspect to it, but for the most part, for most sports, you need a ball, a field, some cleats for whatever your favorite sport is. If you're playing like hockey or golf or something, like, you need a considerable amount of like money to invest in for like clubs or just equipment in general. But I would still have to say, if you want to take on the beast that is professional gaming, you need to have like a decent amount of like money invested in your setup.
This obviously isn't a massive problem, but any amount of lag in a competitive setting could hinder players in unforeseen ways, which isn't optimal. Not to mention, if one of the players has a problem with their system, they won't have the techies on site to help fix it, so they'll probably have to fix it themselves. So yeah, not exactly the most optimal situation for competition, but at least esports could function under these new restraints, which is more than what other competitive leagues could say. With esports being one of the only sporting events that was still functional, it made it a very lucrative and very promising investment. So everything was well and good for the most part. Players could play their game, teams were making money, and more people were getting invested in these games. So what went...
So the good and the bad of the whole world shutdown thing, the P word, since everyone wasn't doing anything really, everyone was just chilling in their house, and they had all this extra time. So what do? They, video games started popping off. People were playing more video games for the year or two. So everyone's paying attention to it. So that's going to, grow your audience for your favorite video game. And I was there.
Wrong. What happened? Well, for lack of a better term, the bubble popped. Esports is a massive industry. However, it is also an extremely pricey industry with a small payout. The franchising cost for a lot of the major teams means that owning a team in these games is an expensive investment that doesn't exactly have a guaranteed payout. A spot in the LCS, for example, costs $10 million. However, if you were to win the World Championship in 2022, your team would only win $2.23 million. A large cut of this should go to the players and staff since, well, they're the ones who actually won the game, so your return on investment isn't the most promising. This means you have to make money back through things like merchandise and sponsors, or through
merchandise, sponsors, and what else?
Through other means like content creation.
And that is the crux of the issue. People that watch video games just do not want to spend their money on their favorite teams merchandise. The value of a video game audience member is very low, if anything, if not zero. Whereas you compare that to the value of like a regular sports fan, like a football fan. If you're a football fan, you probably have some sort of merch in your house. You probably have like maybe a mug, a jersey, maybe a football or something. A bunch of random ass little knickknacks with your favorite football team on there. All right. Now, if you want to compare that to like a video game, watcher or whatever, very few people will have like a TSM mug, a TSM, I don't know, mouse or something, or a TSM mouse pad or whatever. All right. Just for the most part, a video game, tournament watcher is just not going to spend their money on merch. They just don't.
While this worked for some teams with massive sponsors like Ninjas in Pajama getting their own McDonald's burger in Sweden, not every esports team was able to make the McNip burger. And eventually, investors didn't see return on investment and they eventually pulled the plug. With less investors, there's less money going into teams in the league, and with less money, people unfortunately need to get laid off and things need to be downsized.
So I think it was really good of, I guess, Ninjas in Pajamas got the McDonald's sponsorship for like a burger or something with McDonald's. I think that was good. But I think one of the perceptions, or one of the key like misperceptions of, if you want to compare like a top level video game player versus a top level like sports athlete, is by relying on your vision. If you just look at a top level video game person, they don't look like they're at the top. They just look like a regular person. There's nothing outstanding, like just looking at them. You can't see their reaction times or the patterns that they remember or like the button combos and or whatever that they memorize and so on and so forth. You can't see those things. But if you look at a football player, basketball player, I don't know, maybe like a golfer or something, like a real sports player, like something that's very physical, they just look like they are a top performer. All right. So I think that is another aspect that you can take into play. Like, what was it back in the day? I don't know if they still do this, but like they would put athletes on like the Wheaties box. All right. And for the most part, the athletes that were on the Wheaties boxes looked like top performers. All right. You look at them and you're like, oh, who's on the Wheaties box this year or whatever for like this 3 months, whatever. And then they got their name right there. Like, oh, was it Michael Jordan or LeBron James or something like that? And then maybe you didn't know the person. So then you go home, you look up, ooh, what was that person on the Wheaties box for? Oh, they did this and this. Oh, that's pretty cool. If you were to try to put like any video game person on a Wheaties box, most people would just be like, who the fuck is this kid? They just have no idea. They don't look like physically impressive. That's just one of the things that is like literally just a perception of a professional video game player.
In the past 12 months, TSM...
And also, people don't really like the idea of a young kid making millions of dollars. Like, what have you done in your life that is so spectacular to garner millions of dollars? All right, they can't see the tens of thousands of hours that you put into like a game or whatever. But the idea of, I don't know, maybe like a college level and upwards age person putting in time and effort into like the gym, putting time in on a sport, that's more easily digestible for people to wrap their head around. It's like, oh, he does all this hard exercise, dieting and gym, working out, doing shit on the field and whatever, so on and so forth. Oh, that's physically demanding. I think that's worth $1 million. All right. It just looks like an easier sell.
and Team Liquid laid off a large amount of their staff, and Counterlogic Gaming, once seen as one of the biggest orgs in several esports, completely gutted all of their teams after they were bought out by NRG. The only thing that remains of CLG nowadays is the NRG League of Legends team. And leagues like the Overwatch League are... Wait, I don't actually know what happened with the Overwatch League. Hold on. Hey, Keeper, how did the Overwatch League end up failing?
Top-down esport. Can you imagine how stupid you have to be to try and start a top-down esport, especially if you don't know how to run one or care about the slightest bit of anything that isn't T1? Yeah, the whole thing with the Overwatch, I don't even know exactly what happened with the Overwatch League. I just remember it was there, and then it wasn't because of that $20 million buy-in. Jesus. I can't think of a single player who's the same team as they started on. You can't keep the scene going when the players that you started with. There's no point in caring about contender teams anymore. My old favorite team doesn't have the same name anymore, let alone the same players. I don't give a shit.
Oh.
Was that just a fucking Discord message that you messaged to like your buddy that gives a shit about Overwatch? That's so funny. And that's another thing in a lot of what do you call it? Top level esports games. The roster mania. What does roster mania mean? When you think about football or basketball, at least in the US, there are for any team, there are a core group of players that are on that team, and those players are that team. In video games, in general, the teams that tend to stay together are the ones that win the trophies, all right? For every other team, they are adding and subtracting players to fit their team. Oh, this guy's good, this guy's not good enough, this guy doesn't calm well, this guy's got this and this issues, I can't deal with him. You know, people do not give a shit when it comes to keeping the same players and trying to develop a player for the long haul on these teams. That's what I mean for roster mania. So in that sense, it's really hard to become, I don't know, to have like a favorite team. You know, in video games, it's more, what do you call it? It's more common to have a favorite player than a favorite team. All right. If you have a favorite team, most likely that team is probably one of the most winningest teams in that game. All right. So there it is.
To say that esports is on somewhat of a downward spiral recently, and it may be that the peak of esports is finally over, and we need something drastic to happen again for the industry to not die out. With everything becoming as expensive as it is, I can't see too many new faces entering the leagues, and getting actual new talent in these games is extremely hard. Do you know how hard it is to get scouted for a pro team? Almost impossible.
Yeah.
To the point where NALCS players walked out of official competitions due to how Riot was treating their challenger circuit. I'm gonna have to ramble because I forgot to say how hard it is to actually get into any of these circuits.
Yeah.
So this was originally the section where I talked.
It's a lot of the times it's you gotta know a guy. All right. If you cannot get carried, like you have to have a considerable amount of skill in your favorite esport game. That has to be a given. And that alone takes an exponentially long amount of time. On top of that, you gotta know a guy. You gotta have a vouch. You gotta have a connection or something. And not everybody has that.
About how CSGO did everything, and I went over it really quickly. Valve has since added new features to CS2 that completely make the points that I talked about irrelevant, because it has a completely new system. So we're just going to skip to the bit where I shit on Riot for a little bit. Riot games are even worse. Like, they're so bad. So, League of Legends, right? Oh god, League of Legends. League of Legends, when you play, you can get to a high rank in Challenger. And then, if you want to get into a pro team, you have to basically be scouted from solo queue or
Yeah.
apply to the orgs and show them, hey, I kick ass in solo queue, by
Yeah.
the way.
You have to be your own number one fan, essentially. You have to make your own montages. You have to record your own stuff, and so on and so forth. Even if like you're not the most like popular person. I mean, granted, you know, like big number, big person, that's always going to come into play. But honestly, at the end of the day, these people just want to win that bad. So you need to show up.
And then they might put you on their challenger team, which is like an up-and-comer team. And
Yeah.
from there, you have to fucking pray that you go from the challenger leagues to the like higher up ones. However, it is basically a joke amongst League of Legends players that just doesn't happen. Like, the challenger league is useless in League of Legends because nobody gets scouted from it. There's no
Damn.
clear path from like a league player to getting onto fucking TSM or some shit.
Damn.
Like, oh, I want to be Faker. Good shit, bucko. Getting onto a pro League of Legends team is harder than playing a match of League of Legends. And I fucking suck at League of Legends. I'm sure there's some easier ones, but like the
Maybe.
idea of
I got no
becoming
idea.
pro at any major esport is insane.
I mean, to be fair, I think it's pretty similar when you want to compare that statement into real sports. You know, maybe you play your favorite football game, or maybe you play football in middle school, and you're like decent. Maybe you keep playing high school, started on JV, then you made it to varsity, and then, oh, luckily, you got a football scholarship. Hey. And then maybe you got a football scholarship at a state university. Oh, awesome. And you got on the college football team. And then from college, you played all throughout there, hopefully dodging all the CTE. And, you know, off from there, hopefully, like, here comes like an NFL scout. Hopefully they look at you, they look at the numbers and so on and so forth. And they're like, oh, come to the NFL. All right. I think your chances are just as low in real sports as video games. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't know. It just feels just as, just as low chance for real sports. And I'm like, with football, you probably have a greater chance at becoming like a professional football player than anything else. Like if you're trying to become a professional in any other like not as popular sport, good luck, man. It's even harder.
I just want to play with the funny people who made the McNip burger. It's hard for players
McNip.
to get into leagues. It's hard for teams to make money and keep their...
That's what it was fucking called, dude. The McNip. If I were to pull up to McDonald's and I'd just be like, give me a McNip, I have no idea what I would say, like what I would be thinking. Let me get a McNip, a double McNip, please. What the fuck, dude?
staff paid, and the hype behind these games had died down, causing investors to pull out and leave the games pretty high and dry, with nowhere to go and nothing to do. Esports is struggling right now, and it's a shame to see. I really hope this doesn't affect the FGC.
On behalf of Clark County, the sports capital of the world, we have the Super Bowl down the road.
Oh.
We have F1 up the road.
Oh.
We have every other sport, but Evo is the most important sport we have. Thank you so much. Now, therefore, I, Joe Lombardo, Governor
Oh my God, he got the governor. God dang.
of the state of Nevada,
Ooh.
do hereby proclaim August 6th, August 2023, Evo Day in Nevada.
Oh, nice. I mean, as memey as this sounds, I think this is a great step for video games in general. And good on the FGC for setting a precedence. This is great. The immortality of
So
the
a quick
FGC.
recap for those who aren't as ingrained in fighting game culture as I am. The FGC stands for the fighting game community, and is a massive term that encompasses basically all types of fighting games. Traditional 2D games, 3D games, anime fighters, even arena fighters. to some extent. Basically, if the game has two people that look at each other, hit each other with varying degrees of magical bullshit, and it doesn't have gameplay that looks like that one franchise that rhymes with Slipper Mash Mothers, then you can probably find tournaments for it within the FGC.
Yeah.
The FGC originated in the arcade era many years ago. However, as arcades began to die out, the scene around those games tried to find ways to keep the spirit of the arcade alive. Originally in the arcade, games were pay to play, meaning that anyone with coins were able to come and play the games. This made them very appealing to a lot of people, as they weren't massive investments up front. Their cheapness...
Right, but when I was a little kid, I didn't have any arcades near me, so I wasn't able to participate in the FGC, what do you call it, you know, fun bullshit. The only arcades that were around me, I will say, were in the bowling alleys. And there was usually a Tekken arcade machine and I think a Street Fighter one, but I don't remember which games exactly. This was like a long time ago.
And convenience.
And I didn't have a lot of money back then. So, surprise, surprise, I couldn't really play. I was always just watching.
That meant they attracted people from all walks of life to come and play them. The likelihood is that anyone who was a kid or a teen in the 90s will have fond memories of arcades and will probably even be able to tell you about fighting games that they used to play. So how did you keep the spirit of having anyone being able to play, irregardless of class and status, while not having an arcade to play in? Well, you hold an open tournament. Open tournaments are one of the simplest and easiest tournaments to understand. People pay an entry fee and they are now in the tournament. Open tournaments generally do have a limit on the amount of people that are able to join and play in them. However, the entries are generally first come, first serve. It doesn't matter if you're extremely rich or the best player in the world. If you didn't sign up in time, then tough shit, bro, you missed the boat. The entry fee for these tournaments, in the early days, were generally pretty cheap, meaning it wasn't too much of a burden on people's wallets to enter. Plus, tournaments
there were a couple open tournaments that me and my buddies entered. We entered a couple like local tournaments for like Super Smash Brothers, Guitar Hero open tournament. That was a fun one. My buddy took the win on that. I couldn't even come close. What else? Was there like a Tekken one or a Street Fighter one? I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, this was back in the day when EB Games was a thing. And they had those like little TV booths inside EB Games. Those were fun.
Tournaments, even to this day, will have setups that they're not using for tournament matches, meaning that you can go and play as many fun, casual games with people as you want. You can use them to practice, to warm up, or even things like grudge matches. The open tournament format gave the community something to cling on to through the dark age of the FGC. With the death of arcades, fighting games nearly went with them, as developers didn't see much reason to make a new game in the genre. According to Western players, of course. The reality is that companies like Capcom were focusing more on the console market with single-player games. Companies like Bandai Namco were still releasing fighting games with the Tekken series and Soul Calibur games. Arc System Works was still
I forgot about Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur is so good.
in Guilty Gear XX, with BlazBlue Continuum Shift in development after they lost the rights to Guilty Gear. Don't worry about it, they got it back. Fighting games weren't dying, but they definitely weren't as popular as they once were. And so the community waited to see if anything would bring the genre back to relevancy.
Enter Street Fighter. What is this? 4, 5, 6? I like this music. This is like very head boppy.
It's kind of hard to articulate the impact that Street Fighter 4 had on the fighting game community. Mainly because I wasn't there at the time. However, when Street Fighter 4
when Street Fighter 4 got released, and this was the first like 2D, 3D fighter that came out since Third Strike. So the transition from Third Strike to 4 was massive. You know, when they came out and they showed this whole 3D, you have a 3D model, but they still only walk on a 2D plane. People were worried that they were going to change it into something like Tekken, where you could like move into the background and the foreground with side steps and whatnot, but that just wasn't the case. You know, Street Fighter has a very specific style, like art style, and it does well. It has done well throughout time.
Release, the fighting game community grew in size dramatically. Players flocked to the game and the open tournament format that had since replaced the arcades. Since the game's online wasn't exactly the best, players who felt that competitive drive for the game began traveling to offline events, and slowly over the course of several years, the FGC began growing and growing and growing. Since then, the rest is history. Street Fighter V's released to an extremely negative backlash from the community, prompting many players to go look elsewhere for their fighting game fix. Rollback netcode was created by the Cannon brothers and has since been implemented into basically all relevant fighting games. Old arcade games...
Yeah, the whole rollback netcode thing, I forgot like what exactly it does, but it makes it so it feels whenever you're versing someone, it feels like there's very minimal to like 0 to minimal amount of lag between the two players. Because when you play a fighting game and like you hit a button to like throw out a punch and you can feel how much it's delayed, it feels like dog shit. So with the implementation of the whole rollback netcode thing, I think it was a great addition to fighting games. I don't know if this will be possible to implement into like FPS. I just don't know. I mean, it'd be cool to, you know, simulate like 0 lag or 0 ping or whatever, but it's just, I don't know if it'll ever be a thing in FPS.
Are still kept alive through services like Fightcade, giving amazing rollback netcode to long-fought dead games, and the community has since seen a massive boost with the critically acclaimed Street Fighter 6 releasing this year, leading to the biggest EVO tournament ever, with a player count of over 10,000 entrants for all of the different games. 7,000 of those people playing in the Street Fighter bracket.
Damn, that's crazy. Street Fighter 6? Or wait, was this 5? I don't know, but 7,000 of 10,000 were just for Street Fighter. That's crazy.
The fighting game community has weathered many storms and is seemingly unstoppable. No matter what the world throws at it, the community around these games will always find a way to bounce back and live on even stronger than they were before. So what's the secret? Why is the FGC absolutely thriving right now? Well, I think it's a multitude of things. But let's go over the biggest difference from the start.
I'll tell you one thing. It's not like the FPS genre is doing it itself any favors. I'll say that.
Open format. Save for a few events that we'll get onto later, fighting games tend to have an open format for all of their tournaments, from their locals that happen every week or month to their major tournaments that happen once a year. This not only has the benefits that I have already described of letting anyone with the money compete in them, but it allows for something even better for players. A clear path on how to become the best. Let's be real, if you want to become a pro League of Legends or Counter-Strike player, there's a couple of hoops that you gotta jump through.
Yeah. There's a lot of hoops you got to jump through. So like, I would say if the thing with fighting games is, well, there's a couple things really, but essentially if you want to get good at fighting games, what do you got to do? You got to go into the training lab, you figure out your combos, and you can literally just practice by yourself day in, day out. Practice on the left side, you practice on the right side. Practice your combos, you practice your footsies. Maybe your game has like a rank system, you grind the rank system, doing all that shit. And even when you're practicing in the game, all right? I don't think there's any form of like training mode in League of Legends, I don't think. I know there's like a tutorial thing, but like when it comes to like trying to like last hit or like do a jungle route correctly, there's no real way to train it besides like watch a YouTube video and just mimic it. When it comes to FPS, it's so debatable on how to get good quickly in FPS, because that's the thing. It's not enough to get good. You want to get good quick. So I mean, I'm an aim train bro. So I would always argue that, you know, Aim Lab, Kovacs, Aim Beast, so on and so forth. You know, if you want to get good, you play an aim trainer along with your favorite shooting game. And that's just a separator between the player and the game, like the main game. What, you're trying to tell me I have to learn how to click dots and track cylinders and shit to get good at shooting dudes' heads? No, that does not sound attractive. I just want to boot up the game and play and practice in the game. All right? That sounds more attractive. But when it comes to fighting games, everything is that you want to get good at happens inside the fighting game. There's no second, program or game or thing that you're trying to get good at. You want to get good at the game, you just play that game. So that's like one difference that I would say.
You don't only have to get to the top ranks of these games, you then have to prove that you're good enough to play with the pros and either get scouted or apply to amateur teams to get on those rosters. Only from there can you begin to show your stuff and hope that a pro team scouts you, and if you don't get scouted, then you're fucked, kid. Career's over. Are you over the age of 25? Man, you're a fucking boomer. Get lost, old man. Go play Mahjong or some shit. Why don't you go whittle your ways in the critically acclaimed MMO Final Fantasy XIV? I fucking did that for a bit. In the FGC, if you want to be the best Guilty Gear Strive player, just go to a major, beat that guy, and then win the whole thing. Simple. That's not realistic, says the person that forgot the Umi show showed up out of nowhere at last year's EVO and won the entire tournament without being signed.
See, I think that's really cool because that's always a potential thing that can happen. Just a random who person just shows up out of nowhere. They've been grinding in their room for thousands of years, and they just show up and just wipe the floor with everybody. And it's like, oh my God, this guy was a nobody. The underdog story is really cool in that sense for fighting games. That doesn't really happen in any other genre of games, I would say. Maybe Rocket League, because in Rocket League, you can just train by yourself and just develop good ball handling skills and whatnot. But even then, it's like, it's tough.
Being known by her local scene and hardcore NA players. Don't get me wrong, she absolutely put in the work, but you can just go and show people what you're made of. Anyone can be a champion in these games if they're willing to put in the work, and it makes these tournaments really appealing to players. Plus, it's really fun for spectators. The insanity of a...
Okay, and another thing. The thing with fighting games is that, for the most part, it's a single person versus another single person. There is no team dynamics. You don't have to suck up to anybody. It's just you versus another dude. All right? That's it. And you go through however many people you got to go through to get to the championship round. All right? In that 7,000 player tournament for Street Fighter, I can't imagine how many people that you would have had to go through. I mean, if it's just single elimination or double elimination, it's even more crazy. But if it's just single elimination, you had to go through a lot of people to get to the grand finals. And that's both cool and crazy to think about.
7,000 person tournament cannot be understated. So many players being in one place for one game causes insane storylines for players and creates a perfect place for newbies to prove themselves and veterans to show that they still have what it takes to succeed. Not to mention the person who wins and finally takes it can unquestionably be called the best Street Fighter 6 player. For people at home, they will be able to constantly watch high-level matches, and for the people at the venue, they will have insane matches all around them that they can watch. And they can go and play insane matches against all of these high-level players. The spectacle doesn't have to be built up over the year through smaller tournaments, because the amount of players entering alone is more than enough to make people invested and hyped for the games, and the fact that anyone entering could win makes them so engaging.
And also, with fighting games, like I said before, video game players will become more attracted to a single player than they will a team. So look at the fighting game genre. It's just a bunch of solo dudes. So it's very easy to be like, oh, that's my favorite fighting game player. This guy. That's my fighting game character. That guy. All right? It's just one person.
And interesting to watch. But hold on. The biggest event for Street Fighter so far has been EVO. And while it will definitely remain that way for a while, there's another competition in Street Fighter that everybody is talking about. And that is Capcom Cup. Capcom Cup is a tournament held by Capcom. Wow, crazy! Capcom Cup
Yeah.
is a tournament that is held by Capcom every year, and is a cap-off to the Street Fighter competitive scene for that year. This year's Capcom Cup has the biggest prize pool in the tournament's history, having a total of $2 million for the players,
Hell
with
yeah.
the first place taking home $1 million. This will be
Nice.
the finale of the Capcom Pro Tour, the official Street Fighter 6 esports event. The Pro Tour is made up of several offline and online events, with major offline tournaments, regional online tournaments, and a series known as the World Warrior Pro Tour, which has online tournaments all over the world and a last chance qualifier which will let one person into Capcom Cup for winning that tournament.
Nice.
EVO was actually part of this Pro Tour as one of the offline events. However, everything else is a Capcom specific event run by the company themselves, which is a bit of a shame. It's very common for bigger fighting game companies to have world tours like this, like the Arxis World Tour and the Tekken World Tour. These tours use
pretty cool.
community events for their qualifying
I didn't know
events,
that.
with the finals being run by the development team. The Arxis World Tour has several majors around the world that players can go to, and not just in America. There's majors from Australia, Brazil, and more importantly, fucking versus fighting. The Tekken World Tour takes this a step further and has a fully dedicated point system for the players. So players are
dang.
incentivized to go to as many events in the Tekken World Tour as possible. And
That's cool.
this includes small local tournaments. See, the Tekken World Tour has a system known as the Dojo system, in which local events can apply. If the local gets in, the tournaments they run will give the players points towards the Tekken World Tour. This incentivizes players who have an
Dang.
actual shot of making it to the finals to go.
Dang, it honestly seems like the Tekken League, like ran by the developer, is like the coolest one, it seems like. Because if your local game store like applies to becoming like, you know, like a tournament, you know, seat that gives out points and shit, that's just really cool. And it involves more people. And I think that's awesome.
Go to their locals in order to
Like, I couldn't imagine a fighting game thing, like version of that, or not a fighting game, like a shooting, like an FPS doing that. It's just unfathomable to me.
get more points, which is great, because if you're wanting to get good, then there are literally Tekken World Tour level competitors at your local now, which is sick. Imagine like starting out Tekken, and you go to your local, and fucking JDCR is sat there. Like,
I don't know who that is.
that's actually terrifying. Maybe this isn't a good system. Yeah, dude, I went 0-2. It's fine, though, because I lost to Knee and JDCR.
I'm losing it.
These competitions not only let players from all over the world have a shot instead of just forcing them to play in America, but they also encourage players to go out and get better at their locals so they could maybe have a chance at getting to their Games World Finals.
Yeah.
Normally, sponsored tournaments like these conflict heavily with local and unofficial tournaments, but Fighting Games has made an ecosystem in which developers are officially endorsing their tournaments with things like putting them in their World Tour system or even giving them pot bonuses, thus increasing the attendance at these events and making them thrive more, which is great for basically everybody in the scene. But
Yeah.
hang on. It's not like offline events for fighting games were exempt for the past few years. In fact, they were very much affected by the events of 2020. So why are they doing so well despite offline being cut off? Well, at first, they honestly didn't. In fact, fighting games struggled with online play as recently as before 2020. Despite asking for good netcode and good lobbies, it was rare for fighting games made before 2021 to have decent rollback netcode and a functioning lobby system. For
Yeah.
those of you who don't know, rollback netcode is netcode that has your input come out immediately, and then the opponent's game simply jumps to the correct animation once they receive your packet. Here's an example of what they look like from my stream. The fucking rollback! Before this, fighting games used netcode known as delay-based netcode, which simply forced the game to delay inputs until the packets were reached by your opponent. An easy and cheap solution, but one that led to a lot of problems when playing online at further distances. Unfortunately for us, when the 2020 event hit, delay-based netcode was the standard. But there were several games that had rollback netcode and were extremely cheap for people to play. Old games like Skullgirls Second Encore saw a massive boost in players due to it having amazing gameplay, godlike rollback implementation, and functioning lobby. Services like Fightcade saw a boost of players as they offered several different ports of old fight.
Bro, this is like an esport. What was this? This like little shooty like Pearl game. This is an actual esport? That's hilarious.
Fighting games with rollback netcode and arcade perfect gameplay. Even if we look down the timeline a bit, games like Guilty Gear XXAC+R were retroactively given official rollback netcode, and they still have players to this day. Because these games had the functionality to be able to be played online with similar-ish result to how the games were played offline, competitions simply needed to be ported to online play. Not to mention, developers now really started noticing how much people were enjoying these fighting games with rollback netcode over the games that don't. Because of this, the games that have been announced since 2020 have basically all had rollback netcode. From your big blockbusters like Street Fighter 6 to your smaller indie games like Idol Showdown and Tough Love Arena at toughlovearena.com. Because of this, games can now be played competitively online even though we can leave our houses again, meaning that players have more ways to get into the competitive scenes in these games. Instead of going to your local because a friend recommended it, because you stumbled across it and it seems cool, or because you think you're hot shit and can beat everyone, now you can play online till you get really good and go to your local scene to show people what you're made of, which is a great way to get people into these games and a great way to foster the community. Plus,
yeah, that's awesome. I think the fighting game community is like just blowing it up out of the park. And it's like, the funny thing is that if you like enter a tournament in real life, like at like a place like a LAN or like a local tournament, it's pretty different than if you were to enter one online. When you just enter one online, you're in the comfort of your home. You know, you don't have you can be comfortable. You got your little setup going. You know, you got no distractions, and you can just play the game at your convenience. But when you enter a LAN, you're out of your element. You got people right behind you yelling in your ear. You know, maybe it's your competitor's posse sitting behind you yelling out "you suck" or yelling out tactics that you're doing. You know, oh, he's about to like up smash, add a shield, like block it or whatever. Or maybe you're on the ledge. He's gonna jump off the ledge and do a neutral A, punish him. You know, that exists. That is a factor in LAN, like in real life tournament settings that you have to deal with. Just the people yelling behind you, people yelling on the side of you. If it's a bigger tournament, you got people in the crowd yelling at you. And yeah, it's just a different element.
People who don't have local scenes, it's even better because they still get to compete at a serious level with just the online matchmaking and online tournaments. It's awesome. Granted, it's not perfect. A lot of fighting games still struggle with the whole working lobby system thing, but it's getting better, which is always great. The fighting game community was born from one thing: passion for the games that we play. Thanks to its origins in the arcades and the old heads attempting to keep the atmosphere alive, fighting games have adopted the open format for tournaments en masse. The biggest event in fighting games aren't the end of the world tour or some mid-season split. They're the major tournaments that happen all over the world and allow for anyone and everyone to enter and show people what they're made of. Due to just how easy it is to join the competitive fighting game community, the competitions for this game have reached record-breaking heights and make them some of the most fun esports to watch. The growth of the fighting game community and the major events it champions were organic. The events we see as our milestones came from grassroots. It's arguable that they've lost the sense of community-ran tournaments, but the open format that they kept has led to people involving themselves in these tournaments en masse. And even though there are developer-run tournaments, they're still involved in the grassroots community tournaments, with some of them even involving local tournaments in some way, apart from Capcom. Look, I don't want to shit on Capcom because Street Fighter 6 did give us a massive boost, but you could have put some more actual tournaments in your World Tour, Capcom. Like, come on. Just Evo? That's it? Like, it's fine. Hopefully they learn next year and this isn't a sign of things to come. The community has been through hardships and shown that it can survive basically everything. From the death of the arcades, the forced transition to online, and even specific games getting shafted over and over and over and over again. Jesus Christ, Skullgirls, how are you still breathing? This scene has shown that it will power through basically anything, and it's all thanks to how it started. The FGC wasn't forced into the spotlight by any developer. It didn't grow massively because of the investment of some hedge fund hoping to make absolute bank off of the spectacle. It was created from the passion of the players and the competitive drive that these games create.
And another thing, the thing with the FGC is one of the things I really like about the FGC is depending on like the game for the most part, when it comes to a fighting game, people don't really give a shit about the monetization scheme or model, not a scheme, monetization model of the fighting game. So for the most part, when a fighting game comes out, you'll have like maybe like a set chunk of characters, and then maybe you can unlock some characters like from doing like the arcade mode or a couple challenges or whatever, and then all of a sudden, hey, you got all the characters from doing some shit, and then maybe a character comes out and then it costs you $5-10, and then that's it. There's no, maybe a fighting game, maybe you can like buy some skins in the fighting game, all right, but it's not as like the skins in fighting games aren't as heavily pushed as a lot of other free-to-play live service games that try to be esports, you know, like a lot of FPSs, you know, in a lot of like FPS games that are live service, the skins can go upwards to like, you know, 10, 20, 50, 100, 150, you know, $500 for a skin, all right, which is fucking ridiculous. And in the case for the case of CSGO, you know, when you think about that esport, you cannot say CSGO, or not CSGO, but CS2 now. You cannot say CS2 without saying the word gambling with the skins, all right? That is 100% a factor of Counter-Strike that you just can't get out of. You have to mention it. Yeah. But with the case, I think with most fighting games, there's no gambling tied in it at all. You know, like I'm not talking about like side bets. It's like, oh, I bet this guy is gonna win. Versus, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, you know, like there's a whole other side thing, you know, tied into the game. But you know, with fighting games, you could just cruise on the default skins and just whip your dick out and lay it on the table with your default skins and just be like, yo, what's up? You can just do that, all right? If you watch any FPS tournament, all those guys are all like, they got the gold shiny mythic skin, they got the $160 skin, they got the $500 skin, they got the $10,000 knife. They're just like fiddling it in their thumbs, like, oh my god, look at that guy's knife. Oh my god. All right, they're trying to flex on each other with their money. Like, nah, dude, I'm about to whip out this combo on you in the default skin in the fight. So that's another big attractor for me, anyway. To a lot of other people, it's probably like nothing. It don't matter.
In people, the FGC was created, grew, and adapted naturally. And because of that, it is absolutely flourishing. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I'm streaming Strive right now on my Twitch. Guess what? It's the start of September. I have a bunch of stupid goals you can see here, which you can get me to do by giving me money. Come join. We're doing viewer matches. Even if you don't play Strive, even if you don't like fighting games, it's a fun time.
Nice.
We talk about a lot of stupid shit. So come join. It'll be a fun time. Maybe you can get me in those Catboy ears sooner than you think. Who knows? Make sure to like and subscribe. Share this with anyone that you think would be interested. Make sure to comment about what your favorite esport is and how Overwatch League is actually not dying. It's going to be completely fine. If you would like to support this video, I have a Patreon, which you can find in the link in the description. It only costs £1 a month to find everything on there. Granted, there's not a lot, but I try to update my fans as much as possible with stuff that I can do. And if I'm working on a bigger project, I'll make sure to share it with everyone. And if you actually go for the £3 tier, you get your name read out at the end of the video, like these lovely people.
Very
Nice.
special thanks to 64 megahertz almost nap time.
Bro, I thought this is a great ass video. This was a banger. I'm a fan now. Gecko Squirrel. W. Yeah, this was awesome, man. And it just goes to show that, you know, while anybody can say that, oh, esports is dying and this and that, whatever, they have to, when you say the word esports, you have to include the fighting game community. And when you do that, you can see how the FGC is thriving. And, you know, maybe someone can maybe take like a closer magnifying glass to figure out why the FGC is doing well versus, I don't know, some other game genres are just simply not doing well. So I think that's a cool little thing that you could take into account. But no, this video was awesome, man. I want to see more. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. And what a banger. I love it. I'll catch you guys on the next one, all right? Later.